Hello! How's everybody doing? Let me just get Discord on because we have people in there. And one of those people is the one and only
I've got too
Mr.
many
Rolling.
servers at the moment.
So, good evening, Brian.
Hey,
how are
good.
you doing, my friend?
Hey,
So-
good evening. I'm
so-
good. I'm good. How's my microphone? I've switched. I don't know if I'm too loud or too quiet.
It's very good for me. I'll ask the guys out there though. How is Brian's microphone? Is he too loud or too quiet? There's no delay, so don't. I can't use that as an excuse.
Sick.
Not this time, anyway. I normally use it as an excuse, but I can't use it this time.
I feel like his mic is even better than mine.
Yeah. So, there we go.
I'm using the. I've jumped up. I'm using the Blue Yeti at the
Oh.
moment, just testing it out because my gaming laptop's not pretending to be a rocket ship, so I don't have any background noise. Maybe
Well,
in theory.
To me, that sounds awesome because that's just come over nice and clear. To me, anyway. Kerfuffles is saying all is good. Kaseo James is saying all is good. Before we start, big thank you to Von Manstein 2018 for becoming a YouTube member. Really, thank you very much. I love that. So great. And we got quite a few people on already. 19 people. There's Ice Cream Chillin'. Loro Y. How you doing, Loro? Kerfuffles, Level 2 Trading, asking, who's this Rolling guy? Never heard of him. Netforce. Kerfuffles saying, Rolling is the mighty bearded legend. There you go. Giseo Jones is here. Obviously the C-Derp. Fame. Fire Blocks a Gamer. Wowzers. Maybe a bit loud now. Okay, I'll turn him down a little bit. So what's the purpose of this stream? Well, it's just a chat stream. And it's basically a couple of things. Firstly, Wild One's Helper normally does a Friday night with Wild. Unfortunately, because of real life stuff, namely his exams, he's not going to be able to do that. And I don't want to tread on his toes. And I've had a long chat with him. And I said, you know, do you mind if we do like a tournament talk type thing? And he was fine with that because I want to keep that flame burning. And it's his idea. I'm just a stand-in for him until he finishes exams. And he'll be back, don't worry, doing all the bits and bobs that you love on his Friday night with Wild. The other reason is, well, there's quite a lot of talk going through the touring community, and the tour is now started. And we've had a lot of talk about rules in win rate accounts, in MM, and other bits and bobs that have an overall effect. So Rolling was going to do a video, funnily enough. I saw that he was going to do a video, and I said, you know, so I said, wow, I wasn't going to do this stream. But then I did an NA stream last night. There was a lot of negativity in the chat about some of the MM. So I put it out to the community, to my community, said, do you want me to do this kind of stream? And they said yes. Then Roland said, instead of doing a video, why doesn't he jump on and basically address what he was going to address in his video, and I thought that was a fantastic idea. 2 birds, 1 stone, and why not? And so that's the idea behind it, to basically discuss what's happening now with the tournaments, what we feel is not good, what we feel is good. Also to look at the predictions and everything like that. So it's not just one-sided negativity, it's everything. So with that, where shall we start? Shall we start with the main event? The biggest burning thing that seems to be driving everybody crazy in the tour community?
I think that would be a very good place to start. and then the conversation can evolve from there.
That's probably the best idea. So, I think the biggest topic is 100% win rate accounts. I think that continues to be the biggest topic. And the effect.
I think, yeah, and it's... And to look at this, because of course the fact that we've got 100% win rate accounts are a symptom of an underlying issue, and the underlying issue all ties into the seeding. And if you go back far enough in World of Tank Splits tournament history, you get to 2016 where we had the first Twister, and okay, that was done in encounter mode because we didn't have supremacy back then. But the matchmaker behind that was, I don't know the exact details, but I know that there were lots of random elements in that. And of course, the issue with that is you get good teams potentially facing each other earlier on in the competition and getting knocked out ahead of their time in quotation marks. And Fujit and I, we were chatting, or I was kind of spamming you with messages earlier this afternoon, just trying to get my thoughts out on paper. And basically the logic behind it is, if you had like all of your tournament teams in one big group and they played a round robin, that would probably be the best way for you to sort teams based on skill, because everyone gets a fair shake of the dice, everyone plays every other opponent, and provided you have a higher enough best of battle count, like a best of 5, best of 7 or whatever. But that's like a thought experiment. It's really impractical. No one's got the time for that. It's just a complete hoo-ha. So we need to have brackets. We need to have elimination formats. And with the single elimination, the issue, of course, is you need to find a way to prevent good teams from meeting each other too early, because ultimately the purpose of the tournament is to prove who's the best. And you want to sort your competing teams across all the different stages and levels and whatever else, phases of the tournament, make sure that the best teams progress through, and then ultimately the best team overall wins. So and what we have at the moment, this is where the seeding that we're currently using is tournament battles are seeded based on public match results. They've tweaked it a little bit. So currently, as the best we understand at the community level, is Wargaming is seeding teams. They take the 7 best win rates from your team, and that gives the team that average of the top 7 win rates, and that is what determines how good your team is at playing tournaments, theoretically. But of course, we know that that's just not the case. Like, for me, it's insanity to be seeding tournaments based off random battle results before we get into the issue where you can manipulate and game those statistics and arbitrarily give your team a more favorable seeding. So that's where the 100% win rate accounts come in. We've got teams running 3, maybe more 100% win rate accounts, and they have the best seeding possible. They get the bye round. They're guaranteed pretty much to go through to the day 2, and they even get a head start in day 2. Yes. And ultimately, those teams may not be going through to the top 8 overall. But what's happening is, and maybe this is where Fujit can kind of dive into a bit more stuff on stream, we're seeing lots of teams that objectively the entire community is not going to argue that these are some of the best teams in the game, but they're getting matched up with each other before they then go on to face these teams which are, maybe they're okay, but they're not necessarily as good. And certainly the fact that they're getting seeded so favorably in the tournament structure is entirely related to the fact that they are manipulating their win rate with these 100% win rate accounts.
So
I think that
just going back, I mean, just to try and sort of clarify, that there are, from my viewpoint, I think there are three major issues. Issue number one is the game has evolved from the point whereby win rate seeding was a relatively reasonable way to view a clan's positioning. But because the game's evolved now, we've got ratings, we've got other matters, other things thrown into the equation. Win rate seeding itself is not the best way to say whether a clan should be seeded here or there. So there should be an alternative somewhere along the lines. That's number one. Number two, you then have group seeding. So we have a group draw. So for example, on EU, we had 7 groups for PYS number one. And how those teams are picked to go into certain groups, I personally am not sure about. And I know that Group 1 yesterday had, I think it was Serenity, APA, Vale and Immor, 4 top 8 teams just in one group. And there are 7 groups. So, that makes you wonder. And then also in Group 7, we had Raid and Endgame in the same group. And there's another 2 top 8 teams. So there's 6 of the top 8
and those,
effectively in 2 groups.
And the Raid and Endgame are both like server championship sides, of course. Like
Absolutely.
You go back historically, there's a change in rosters and abilities, but more or less, no one's going to argue with you that those 2 are some of the best teams on the EU server.
Absolutely.
And that's, I mean, because like we said, we need to go and calculate to fully understand how the teams are being kind of dropped into the different groups at the beginning of the tournament. We need to go and calculate the exact win rate and see what seeding value each team would have been given.
Yes.
If we take the top 7 win rates and establish an average from that.
And then
but even if
sorry, go on.
So I was going to say, even if that's not even if that is automated and that's just an unfortunate coincidence, that unfortunate coincidence highlights how completely inadequate the current system is, because and that just completely highlights the point that we're making, which is like this system is putting teams that are at the top level against each other ahead of their time, and the reason why it's doing this, I mean, the 100% win rate accounts are having an effect on it, but the reason why the current seeding system is doing that is because it looks at random battle data and it does not accurately capture and reflect a team's ability in tournaments. And now we have, within Blitz esports tournaments, we have 5, 6, we've got at least 5 years of data about, and that's linked to every player's account is 5 years worth of tournament history data that could be somehow utilized. Now you'd have to sit down and work out how you're going to express that in an algorithm to determine a seeding, but it's totally doable. And that is the only way to reflect, the best way, the most accurate way to reflect how good a team is at a tournament is to refer to their performances in a tournament.
And I don't disagree with that. That brings us to the third issue, which is once they've been allocated to a group, and then there's the seeding within the group, which is where I see the 100% win rate account suddenly now having an impact, because that draws you on the strongest, weakest principle. So if your win rate is boosted by, if your overall clan win rate is boosted by 100% win rate accounts, then the chances are you're going to be matched up with the weakest in that group, rather than face opponents who are slightly worse than you, etc., etc. But I agree with you on the other point. I mean, going back to the first issue, which is how do we effectively seed? At the moment, we've got what I would classify as golf seeding, which is basically it's based on your random play, rather than say football seeding, which is based on performance over a period of time. So, for example, if you win, the more competitions you win, the higher up the seeding you go in football, for example. This is something we're not seeing in Blitz at this moment in time. We're seeing based on, as Roland quite rightly pointed out, a player's ability in random battles, which a lot of people are now saying, well, that's a bit skewed, since nowadays, in some instances, doesn't generally apply to the pro players, I must admit, but in some instances nowadays, because the player base has been kind of diluted since 5.5, and that's not disparaging against the less able skilled players out there, because I'm one of those less able skilled players, but it has been diluted a little bit to an extent whereby sometimes winning in random battles now is more luck on the rather is than skill, to be honest with you. So is it something they need to move away from and go to this performance-based criteria, which we're talking about? And how are we talking leagues, or are we just looking at raw data from previous tours? Because one of the problems I feel that they've got is there is an instability in some respects on some of the clan scenes. Not RU. I mean, RU is pretty stable, and some of the clans with EU, take for example Raid and Endgame. I mean, they are pretty stable in Loca and such, but we do have clans come and go.
Wilds and I had discussed that, because it's a very valid point. Like a team is not a static thing. It's a collection of individuals, and there's some stability there. And I guess like the way you'd need to do it is obviously more recent performances are weighted higher than more historic ones. And in the same way that we're looking at like an individual player's win rate at the moment, or Wargaming are looking at their public win rate, we would look at an individual player's performance record.
Yes.
So that would tell you like how far has this player gone in tournaments. Like, you can find a way to calculate or express in an equation feeding into an overall team seeding value, like the contribution of this player. So someone that's gone into the top 8 repeatedly really has quite a good level of that. And then even you can look at connections between players as elements that you can feed into an algorithm. So for example, if you've got like a group of 4 players that have played together in the same team over the last 2 years, for example, I'm sure like there are some little groups like that exist. Like that would give you a small coefficient in the formula that would give that a boost. It sounds complicated, but once it's automated and once you've tweaked it, it can become very routine. And also it's very, if you don't release that, it's very difficult for teams to then go and artificially manipulate it. But but also what you're saying, like referring to leagues and knockouts and things, that's another issue, and that ties in. Because we have like the strongest, the reason why we have the seeding, and then that is what goes into the strongest versus weakest matchmaker. So the two together, those two elements together, are designed to keep the best team on EU from facing the second best team on EU until the grand final, or as often as possible, so they don't trip each other up and don't knock one of each other out for the grand final. That's the kind of like Dr. Ad Absurdia theory.
Because at the moment that can and does happen. I mean, you do get clans, named clans, meeting each other early doors, and in certain instances we've seen it in winter. I don't know if we're seeing it right now, but we certainly saw it in winter. They meet before the just before the quarterfinals or in the quarterfinals, and therefore one of these named clans doesn't make it through to the final stage the next day, and that is a problem, because obviously it's all about cups and collecting those cups to get into that top 8.
And then of course, because that's the one of the bad things from the current system we have. It's not perfect. Then the other bad thing, and this is something which I think it's less talked about, but it might even be more problematic if we're talking about growing a viable esports scene, is the fact that we have strongest versus weakest. And Wargaming say, oh no, but we only, like, these seasonal majors are not for everyone, they're just for the best teams. I mean, like, we're on EU, we're getting like about 100 teams
approximately
in the PYS.
Teams, yeah,
100 teams. I mean, they're running quick, like, and they say like quick tournaments are for like people to get tournament experience, but the rewards and your opposition and the general experience in quick tournaments is not great, in my opinion. But so Wargaming make a distinction. They have an internal distinction where they say these big seasonal things are for the best players, and the other tournaments where it's like you have teams are matched up against like opponent, or it's random, or it's a quick tournament. That's for like people getting into the swing of things.
But that's not strictly true, is it? I mean, well, it may be from
No,
their
exactly.
perspective, but from my perspective, I don't find that to be a valid argument, because the
It's
whole
not
idea
from the player.
of prove your skill is anybody, any clan can take part and give it a go.
Can have a crack at the whip.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's how the players see it. I've yet to meet a player that says, "Oh no, sorry, we don't want to play that because we know we're not good enough." Everyone thinks they're at whatever level,
Indeed.
And this is the organic growth. The organic growth of esports in Blitz is completely defeated by this seeding system, because in theory, the best team, the highest win rate, or the best ability, like even if we assume the seeding system works correctly, you have the single best tournament team, their first opponent should be, in theory, the single worst tournament team, which is just absolute insanity, because for me, it's a waste of the professional players' time, because they don't need to sit through 2 battles, because it's going to be a 2-0 and a best of 3 single elimination format. They don't need to sit through 15 minutes and then wait half an hour for the next opponent. Just dispatch someone. Like, you're looking at endgame. It's a team of 70% win rates versus a team of like low 40% win rates. It doesn't, that matchup doesn't need to happen. You don't need, like, no one in no universe, unless
it has 3 effects.
it's pre-given.
I mean, the first effect is that it's some people turn around and say, for example, the first effect could be that the pro team, like, let's take Endgame as an example, not picking on Endgame, just an example because of who you are. And they say, oh, well, this team we can roll over, let's all take Death Stars. And it looks like they're being disrespectful. They'd never do that, but it looks that way. That's one effect. Second effect is that you've got a clan that probably wants to get its foot, its toe, dip it in the water. And first out, they've got Endgame. They are not going to want to do tournaments again, because you don't want to get smashed in your first ever tournament, in the first ever game, by effectively the best clan on the server. Because it's just
makes
disheartening.
zero sense.
It's disheartening. And I
And
wouldn't
it's
want to keep
the
going
same
through
way.
that.
It's the same way as, like, for example, we in public matches, people often say to people like, "You're not ready for tier 10. Go back and learn some things at tier 7." The learning curve, like, if you jump and you miss the steps, you don't learn how to side scrape, you don't know what different vehicles do. You can spend a lot of time at a level beyond where you should be learning, and you can be there and learn nothing. It's like if you take like someone who's in junior school, secondary school, and stick them in a PhD class at university. Like, they don't have all of the necessary prerequisite steps to even benefit from being in that class at university.
Really?
Majority of the cases. The same thing happens in tournament battles. Like, this team could be really keen, really wants to get into tournaments, and it's no small thing. Like, Blitz, the teams are pretty big. So, like, say you're a 7-man team, a 10-man roster. You've got 10 people from all over the world have decided to come together, hopefully on a voice chat, crack open some beers, have a good time, and maybe look forward to a whole evening of tanking, because the tournament starts at 8 and it finishes at 10. This is great. We don't know much about it. Let's see what happens. And they play 2 battles. They have no idea how they lost. They probably didn't even see half the enemy team, and they died. The entire team was killed within a minute of each battle. And they say, we're never going to play tournaments again. And that's where you cut out the organic growth. You cut it off at the knees, and you get less teams playing tournaments.
Well, you do for the seasonal ones, which is bad, because then if you look at it, as you said at the beginning, I think you're right. We had 100 clans register for the PYS #1 on EU, and if I were to extrapolate the figures, I bet we had a lot more clans registered for the quick tours, because you're not going to get clapped by the big teams in the quick tours, and you get a second bite at that cherry if you die. Well, you get more than a second bite. I mean, if you go out in a quick tour and you lose in, say, the second round, then you get a second life. And if you lose again in that round, at least you get to re-enter the tournament again, where you get 2 more lives effectively. So quick tours.
Yeah, and
if you're a clan starting out, why would you not do quick tours rather than PYS? Which is a misnomer, because PYS is meant to be open to everybody, and it's meant to be the pinnacle of the tour scene. So it's sort of, you're chopping your nose off to spite your face a little bit.
It's true. It's true, and I think this is when I was in at Wargaming's HQ, like beginning of last year for that blessed HEGM video thing, and I sat down with the esports team and I said, like, single elimination. There's no reason why the team that loses the first bracket can't then go on and play the other losers. Like if you take a group of 16, it funnels down and you have like first place, second place, maybe there's a playoff for third and fourth, but then at the moment, like 5th to 8th are all in the same level, and then 8 to 16 are all in the same level. They play one fixture and then they're knocked out within a particular bracket. You can, in the same way that you have winner goes on to play winner, and kind of sequentially you filter down to the winner of the group, you can have a same system with the loser brackets. Loser plays loser, and you'll end up with the group sorted from first place completely down to 16th place. And all of these fixtures happen in parallel, and it's still single elimination. And this has the added benefit of, okay, you don't need to tweak the strongest versus weakest system. So that will probably make Wargaming quite happy. But it also has the added benefit, two added benefits. One for Wargaming is that it's much easier because you have more, rather than having like plays 5 to 8 gets 500 cups each, and then you have 4 teams with the same number of cups. You have individual places within the group. You have a unique first place through to 16th place. 16th place has lost all of their games and probably had a really bad evening, but they're still uniquely 16th place. So that means it's easier for Wargaming. You have less tiebreakers, less shenanigans on the trophy scoreboard at the end. But then the main benefit of that, like you say, is the players get to play another game, and their opponents, like, they kind of work their way through the opponents towards slightly easier opponents or slightly harder opponents, honing in on opponents that are more on their level, which is what you see in quick tournaments. And it just boggles my mind, because I was explaining this to Wargaming. It took me 2 hours to get them to understand what I was saying. And the reason why we can't have this is because Wargaming don't know how to implement it. Which is just, it hurts my soul on a deep level, you know?
Well, I mean, as I said at the beginning, I mean, the game is evolved since the tournament creation. It's no longer the same game. Insofar as we have multiple game modes now, we've gone from, if I remember rightly, didn't we have what 2 tours before the Twister? Now we've got 4, so it's evolving all the time. But what seems to be, I know Wargaming only have 2 people presently dealing with the tour side, so across all the servers, so they are strained resources. And one of the reasons why that is because Wargaming's argument is that, well, the majority of the player base don't do tours. It's only like 1%. So we're not going to invest in that side until more people play or more people watch. So it's a bit of a catch-22, to be fair. But from where I'm sat, and probably from where you're sat, one of the problems that they've got is we're not asking them to invest lots of resources or time or effort into this, but it's in their benefit also, because these tours, and we've seen this, they get a lot of people viewing them on YouTube, you know? I mean, yesterday, my viewing figures for Asia were over hundreds. My viewing figures for EU were in the hundreds. Okay, my viewing figures for NA were in the 50s. But, you know, that's a lot of people watching a tournament, which is just a PYS tournament, to be fair. It's not the big pro tour. And we know that...
You'll see what you'll...
Well, we just know that Blitz, the Blitz Cup last year, when they split it over the 4 regions, that they were getting thousands of people watching. So there is an interest
because that's what
and it is good marketing.
That's what you'll see with the tournament numbers. That's what you'll see with the tournament numbers is, like, you'll have the first PYS, you'll have a mini peak, like a spike, because people go, oh, it's a new tournament, oh yeah, and then they watch it, and then you'll have like that will taper off towards the end of the PYS format, and then you'll have another spike at the beginning of the top 8 stage, like the kind of the group stage, and then like you'll have your really big numbers in the grand finals, or when you get like a really good matchup, like when there's 2 teams and everyone says, actually, like I wanna watch that. Like that's when you get your big spikes.
But whilst I appreciate wargaming and I want to throw resources at it at this point in time, it is a double-edged sword, because if you don't evolve with the current game, which is evolving, then you're going to get stuck in a rut, and all you're doing is churning out effectively archaic rules and regulations and seeding on a game that's vastly evolved since the implementation of this, which is the point that we're at now, whereby we're dealing with tournament behind the scenes, the seeding, etc., that is based on something that was implemented 4 years ago for a game that has moved on. That is not the same game that it was 4 years ago, basically.
Well, even the number of teams playing at a certain level on all the servers has increased. Like the depth of the top level of skill. Like there are more players that you could comfortably say are top level players, and of course, like they'll argue amongst them, like, oh, so and so is not actually that good. But like objectively, from a neutral standpoint of being like a commentator or an analyst, you can say like there are lots of players. There's lots of lateral movement between the teams. There are more teams for them to move between now more than ever, and even like the national sides are getting like more competitive. Like there have been some pretty big. I mean, there's always been the Germans and the Finns, but there's we've had lots of French sides. There's always been Polish sides, and now of course like Wargaming have put in this like this mercenary free agent. Like you can have two people from outside your region, which I think is really freaking cool. Like that's good. Because then you start getting like you're building the relationships between the players. But it has, you're spot on, it's evolved so much past there. And I think, and that's a large part down to the players. So then I guess, because this is something that has been discussed a lot on the tournament channel and Wargaming's official Discord server. It's like, okay, like everyone wants to have a go at wargaming for all the different grievances we have, and that's like, it's my new favorite hobby because it's just so easy. There's lots of low-hanging fruit. You can just go around going, oh, I could do better. Oh, you know, like it's too easy. It's too easy. But like, of course, the flip side is, okay, there's these loopholes that are being exploited by teams, and I like whenever I see a team exploiting a loophole or not being particularly sporting, I've always called it out, and I've had some backlash in the past, like with regards to when teams were doing ticket farming. I was like, well, this is pretty bad because you guys are exploiting a loophole to get your team through, not off the back of your skill, but at the expense of other teams that are not exploiting this loophole. And I would say like they're different, but it's the same kind of moral conundrum that we see with the 100% win rate accounts.
Yes.
It's like everyone could do it, but not everyone is doing it. And some people are doing it like to a silly level, and probably, you know, we're not far off like someone just rocking up with 10 100% win rate accounts just to prove a point, which would be pretty good, I think, actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, looking at that side, I mean, I saw one of the posts earlier, I think it was by you, in fact, saying that, well, because the loophole hasn't been closed, there is indirectly encouragement to use them, which, to be fair, is not far from the truth, because I mean, I know Wargaming are looking at addressing this, and I know they're trying that, and you know, if you look at what Wargaming is saying from the people who run the tournaments, are saying, look, we'd love to implement it tomorrow, there's only 2 of us, we're working hard, we cannot do these things manually, and we're working to develop something, but it's taking time. And I get that, and I love that, and I thanked Wargaming for communicating that, and I did say, well, maybe. But
that's a bit of a misnomer, though, because
but they should have communicated it earlier. Is what I'm saying. Maybe
but what they're saying is it's technically true, but it's also not the full truth. Like, we have to think Wargaming as a company, it's spread out across like 4 or 5 continents.
This is true.
They've got offices in a dozen countries. It's 5,000 plus employees. The mobile studio has got however much. That's headed up by Thane Lyman. Blitz has got about 250 people working on it. Now that is a lot of the people we have no idea who they are, because they're like all the artwork you see. And to be fair, like a lot of the people doing the artwork, maybe they'll do some stuff for the mobile studio, maybe they'll do some stuff for one of Wargaming's other IPs. But there's there are two people in Wargaming's like esports, like the kind of design, development, community management aspect, running the tournaments, but they're not like physically going out, at least as far as I understand it. I'd love for them to say, actually, we do that, because that would be news to me. But like, as far as I'm aware, the Wargaming staff that we know as the esports division, they help run and coordinate and lead the events, but they're not the ones going into programming and coding it. Probably a huge issue that we have, or Wargaming has, of course, is being this very big bureaucratic leviathan of a company. We've seen it with Update 5.5, with ATGMs, with a whole host of other things. Like their development time, their development cycle is about a year. They have a huge lead time on coming up with the ideas, deciding to do the ideas, working out how they're going to do them, executing them, and then like if there are problems, reversing those problems can take just as long. So if Wargaming are going to fix the seeding system in time for Twister, I am expecting that we'll be seeing something that has been a year in the making, that's gone up through the different hierarchies of management, and then come back down, and then gone off to implementation, and then been tested, and then gone into effect, which is painful.
Yeah, but there is some truth to that, because most big organisations are, as you say, bureaucratic leviathans that take a long time to wake up. So there is some of that, and I do know that I mean, for example, there was a message earlier about there's a slight rule change in this spring season, with about players had to play at least 3 PYS games in order to gain the rewards at the pro and or the challenges tour element. Now that came about because we wrote a big report at the end of winter season, the streamers, and that was one of the things we mentioned, that there was things going around about people selling spots to get avatars or whatever, but there was also things about, well, hang on a minute, the likes of me, I'm in Vale, I get a Pro Tour ticket, I'm by no stretch of the imagination pro player, yeah, I could have gone into the Pro Tour and just sat on the bench and got a pro avatar. And the whole idea behind it is meant to be, it's a reward earned for skill.
Yeah, but I mean, but you would be completely within your rights. And to be honest, like I've long accepted that, like I'm old, my reflexes are sharp. I'm not at tournament level anymore. Like I play a good game in randoms because I can outthink people that are not playing very well. You put me head to head against a super unicum, like I'm gonna get clapped. I know
You're not old. You're not old.
Yeah.
I'm old enough. I'm old enough.
No,
but I would be. Sorry, but I would be quite happy. I would be quite happy to like sit on a team and get a pro avatar and a background. Like I would be well on board with that. I wouldn't deserve it. I'd love it.
And so would I. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I would have been like, yeah, over the moon. Come on, put me in. Just sit me on the bench. I don't care, and I'll get the camo and the avatar, and everybody will then point fingers at me and say, who? How on earth? What? How? Hey? Why? And so that was the reason for that rule change. And to be honest with you, and this goes to show sometimes some of the machinations that go on behind the scenes. Wargaming implemented that in between in between the end of winter and now. So that is something that the community said to them, look, here's something that, and it's an easy address for them. They just have to put it in the rules. So they do, to an extent, if it's easy for them, and it makes sense to them, they will address it. When it comes to the 100% win rates, initially I thought, because I'd heard through the grapevine that the RU server was against having anything that took away these 100% win rates. So I reached out to the RU server guys, some of the clans, and they are universal in their hatred of it. Absolutely universal. So it's not the RU
good
side.
because that's good because I mean on balance, like it doesn't matter really because like you have a split in the Blitz community. There is the CIS server, and then Asia, North America, and EU are kind of like we're clustered together, and there's probably less of us all in our collectiveness than there is on the CIS server. So whatever we're discussing, if the CIS server have a different opinion, like it may not like the wargaming they're gonna side with the majority of their client base, and I think that's probably part of the reason why there was a little bit more inaction than there should have been with regards to the ATGMs, because if you look at all of the poll data and survey data, the CIS server was much more 50-50.
Yes.
On like stay or go or change. Whereas if you looked at North America, Asia, or EU, it was like 3-1 people going, what the hell have you done? Take it away. But so hearing like this is, I think that's really good that you've gone and spoken to CI. I mean, there's a big language barrier there quite often, and they're hard to pin down and get a hold of in that sense. So the fact that you've been able to go out and confirm that gives me a lot of hope, because that means that there's more chance and there's more momentum behind something happening.
That was my sentiment. So I'd spoken to Mafodi and Pyroblast, who were the two RU streamers, really good guys, and both of them independently said to me, look, it causes a massive issue over here. All the clans are upset, especially the top clans, with this, and they want it gone. So that filled me with the same sentiment as you. As long as the RU server are facing the same issue, and as long as they're putting on the same pressure, and I think they are, then we're still going to see sort of the slow implementation of something, but it won't be as slow as we normally see with the likes of ATGMs, for example. Because if their main... Because the RU server is completely different when it comes to clan wars than the other servers. I mean, there's a lot of interest. There's even big followings against clans. There's supporters. There is a lot more. I mean, when we did the Blitz Cup, the RU server had somewhere in the region of 20 to 30,000 people watching that stream. I mean, it was huge. Whereas compared to, we had, I think it was 9,000 watching the EU stream, or I think it may have been.
That's still pretty good.
That's still fantastic. It was absolutely awesome.
That's still pretty good.
You know,
I think that's and of course there's more of a cultural thing towards the whole wargaming products like World of Tanks. Even that's bigger, and probably there are more players that have gone from World of Tanks PC to World of Tanks Blitz from kind of Russian speaking or like CIS communities. It's made by a developer that speaks their language. I mean, it's no coincidence that games are bigger, like games that are developed in the West are more popular in the West. Like there is definitely a demographic skew. I mean, that is all supposition. Like I'm just kind of like pitching it out there, looking at what we see. Like games that are developed in America and Europe tend to be more popular in America and Europe. Games that are like the old StarCraft, for example. Well, that's not a good example, but even the types of games that are popular, like MOBAs and RTSs, are more popular in the East and Southeast Asia. I don't know why. And if you go over to the Western esports, is a lot of also MOBAs too, but FPS games. I don't really. All I know is that for wargaming, for their products, I mean, they are a company which is based in the CIS region. Their primary working language is Russian.
Yes.
Belarusian. I mean, probably the international stuff is mostly English as well. But when it comes to World of Tanks and World of Tanks Blitz, all in the office, they're speaking Russian or Belarusian. All of the in-game materials, the PR, the even in terms of how they interact with the community on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and I mean all the other apps that, like Telegram, for example, is more popular in Russia and Belarus. Like the way that, for example, that Alexandra can synthesize a message on Facebook about an update is better than how, like, her English is very good, but like she's more fluent, more engaging in Russian than she is in English. So
they can express themselves better, and this is one of the other problems that you tend to find, is that some of them are some of the wargaming staff are incredibly linguistic. It's like Darth Antonia speaks English beautifully, Ribble Strike perfectly as well, and the likes of Alexandra. But these are effectively sort of like a face of the community. So they're chosen because their English skills are very good as well as their other skills. Some of the wargaming staff that we do interact with on the Discord, however, their English skills are probably limited. So sometimes what we're getting is their translation via Google Translate or some other method, or their broken English. And like most language, some of it is lost in translation and some of it is taken out of context. And we very rarely consider that, to be fair. We think everybody should obviously speak a particular language fluently. And I go back again to when I was with the Blitz Cup. We had the English speaking, they had their own Discord server for the Blitz Cup, for the teams and for everybody. And there was the English and the Russian. And the Russian part was far more active from the wargaming staff because it was more comfortable for them. It's easier to communicate for them. And they can express themselves a lot better than what they can in English. So I do feel for them in that respect. But again, we get back to, the game has evolved. And if you want to build your market outside of your preferred your initial demographic, which is the primarily the Russian-speaking parts, then you've got to find a way to talk to and listen to them. And I think it's taken a long time. They're slowly getting there, and they're a lot better than what they used to be. But there is still a communication barrier, and that's got to be overcome at some stage. And as I said, going back, I've seen somebody mentioned Nopka there. Yes, I've seen Daria's. She recently said, "Look, there's only two of us. If I could do the 100% win rate thing tomorrow morning, I would. We don't want it. We want to get rid of it, but it's taking time for this reason, this reason, this reason." Had that been said earlier, then some of it may have been diffused. But that's
I think that's,
you never know.
Yeah, it's true, because it's also like the kind of ability and comfort with communicating certain things, and if you're reading entire threads, you're pulling apart the key information, you can reply more decisively and address those concerns and placate the community. Like it's not difficult, but then I think that's another thing. Be not just a language barrier, there is a culture barrier.
Yes.
I think there is more of a cultural difference between Russia and kind of like former Soviet Union states compared to Europe, than there is between European states. Like the way that we communicate and express and deliberate, and the kind of the niceties, but the way that we expect communication to go is very different to how they expect communication to go.
To an extent,
if this was a Western developer, you look at the PR departments of Western developers, how they handle like the kickback from crowds. They're like, oh my god, this, like, Jesus Christ, we're so dumb. How did we not see this coming? Don't worry, guys, we're going to flip it back. Next update, hang in there. People are like, wait, let's have a laugh for the next 2 weeks. Wargaming's never going to say that. Like, there are ways that Western developers, like, they're savvy in a European or American humor and cultural way with those bases that's relatable. And I'm sure, like, the wargaming staff do the equivalent of that with players on the CIS server. Like, they conform to those cultural norms. So and that's, so I can understand it's tough. There's like the language barrier and the cultural barrier. You're killing my love of whaling on wargaming now. Like all the low hanging fruit has just been elevated by a couple of feet because I'm getting some emotional guilt coming on now.
Don't worry, we're going to go back to it because the 100% win rate thing is not new. It really reared its ugly head around autumn, I believe. So prior to autumn, it's not to say that people weren't using it, but prior to autumn, summer we don't count because that was a ridiculous tier 8 tournament of Object 252Us basically. But between spring and autumn, we had in the spring season the ticket fiasco, which to their credit, Wargaming addressed. They did address.
That's fair. That's fair. They did fix it.
And so we had the spring season last year. We had the ticket fiasco, which Wargaming addressed by firstly giving us a tier 8 tournament. Why? For the love of God, we don't know why. But I think it was to get more clans involved because not everybody has tier 10 meta, and it didn't really work.
True.
Because everybody just spammed Object 252Us. So that in autumn,
tier 8 is the most. Yeah.
Yeah. So in autumn they went
It's just
back.
unbalanced.
Completely. I mean, if it wasn't 252Us, it was Chimeras. And if it wasn't Chimeras, it was something else. So it was just basically a premium spam. So for autumn, they went back to tier X. They got rid of the ticketing fiasco, and then this 100% win rate came about. Now, clans are always going to look for loopholes that aren't necessarily against the rules to boost their chances. Simple fact of life. And
What about finding those edges?
yeah, it's all about finding those blurred areas. And they, certain clans found those blurred areas. And this came up at the end of autumn. So at the end of autumn, people were saying, well, look, the win rate seeding isn't working because of 100% win rate accounts. It's throwing a misnomer in there. And one of the clans, I'll be honest with you, there was a clan that came around. I don't think they're on EU anymore, or they are, but they're not in the tour season. They were seeded first place, yet they didn't even make the top 8. They lost to every single team in the top 8. And this is what highlighted this 100% win rate, because I think they had 3 or 4 100% win rate accounts. And that really hammered home that there was a problem. And then it came
It's having an effect.
Yeah, and then exactly. And then people started looking a bit deeper. And then for winter, people were seeing that the 100% win rate accounts, so to speak, or clans using them, was having an effect on where you are actually seeded. And as Rowling said at the beginning of the stream, to the point where you're getting buys, into the next stages, and you're missing out on certain things because you're seeded, because your win rate happens to be high. And everybody was hoping, lots of people raised this in the hope that something was going to be implemented by spring. It's not, and therefore this has sort of been amplified with people thinking that wargaming just being totally inactive and not getting off their backsides, which, okay, there may be some truth in that, but I'm erring on the side of caution thinking, well, they're trying to do something about it, but it's taking time. And now we're getting to a point where clans are amplifying it even further because now it exists and now everybody knows it exists and now everybody knows it actually has an impact and effect on where you are seeded and who you will face.
Yeah, boosting your win rate gives you an easier set of games before you meet someone that eventually goes on to knock you out, regardless of whatever your actual tournament ability is. Having a higher average team win rate will give you worse opponents. Yeah. I mean, it would be quite funny. I would love for it would never happen, but I would love, for example, for like a top level tournament team to do some rerolls, but rather than having 100% win rate accounts, go for 0% win rate accounts. And then imagine if Endgame, just for a laugh, they had they were able to get some accounts. This is obviously, I'm not saying anyone should do this and it would be damaging for the public matches as well, but just as a thought experiment, you have like a team of like a top 4 level EU side were to re-roll very badly and somehow get all of the tier X tanks that you need to compete, and then they would be matched up against like the best teams first, like round one, like your 100% win rate seeding team like gets hunted down by your top 4 team that are like, we don't like what you're doing.
Yeah. Well,
of course, no one's going to do that.
No, but I mean, to be fair, it does have a big effect. Now, Jake Does Blitz says, that NA matchmaking in PYS was a bit suspect. Well, he doesn't say that. I'm not paraphrasing. He says it meant that the top-rated team didn't make the top 8. Now, I streamed NA PYS number 1 yesterday. I was following GG, and there were quite a lot of comments in my stream saying, how is it this particular team, who's a good team, a known team, a named team, is knocked out and won't make it into the final stage, yet this team, not such a well-known team, who absolutely got annihilated in one particular round by GG, is going into the final stage. And there's a lot of, because obviously they had an easier route through the PYS staging than the more known team, so to speak. So this is the effect it does have. Now, I haven't looked into the NA clans to see how many are using 100% win rates, etc., etc. But there is always going to be this disparity. Now, yesterday on EU, as Loro pointed out to me earlier, I didn't know this because I was following Raid. Serenity met Loka quite early. And I think Serenity beat Loka. So Loka are sort of, I don't know if they're into tomorrow, to be honest with you. I
They're
haven't
not.
checked. No, they're not.
They're
So
not.
there's a named team that met another known team pretty early, and they're not making it into tomorrow's final stage. And with this PYS being a sort of streamlined PYS, rather than 8, there's only 6. This is when the cups become even more critical and crucial. So there is a knock-on effect on all of this. And it's I'm not here saying that I want certain teams to be in the top 8 and we should ring fence those certain teams. What I'm saying is that you've got to get to a point whereby your how can you put it, your favourites, so to speak, because if we were betting, there'd be bets on endgame, grade, etc., etc. Your favourites aren't going out early doors. Let's put it that way.
Or if they are going out, it's because they're getting beaten by the right team. Like they're getting beaten at an appropriate level. So like they're not getting knocked out before they would meet a team that they would just necessarily beat. That's of course the issue with the single elimination. If you look at some of the brackets, you look at 2 teams that are meeting in like round 2, whatever, and like, well, both of these teams can beat this team that they're scheduled to meet in round 3, but this team in round 3 has had a bye, and they've had a bye because they've had this win rate manipulation by using the 100% accounts, and this is where we're having now the seeding system is no longer, or it's very poorly reflecting tournament team abilities.
Well, just
and
on
so
that point,
the necessary outcome.
I noticed that the Bear Nose is in the Discord, and he's just written into the YT chat that Vibes are not entering a team into spring because of the 100% win rate. So, Bear, come on, spread your knowledge.
I think I know Janice said something similar as well. So that would be like the second one that I've heard of.
Yeah, we're not doing it. Simple reason is because we had Saw, who got through the first round every time, got the cups, and then we'd draw BPS in the first round or R2K. And it was just ridiculous because they get the extra cups and then they're always above you in the chart unless you beat one of the top teams.
And then if you would meet them, would you go on to beat
We
them?
beat them
Or like
twice. We beat them twice when we got through the first round. It was just ridiculous how it worked out.
Oh Jesus! See that's I mean that's the kind of thing. And then when it's not just like one team. I don't know how many teams are using how many. I think it would be quite good if someone could maybe, after this first kind of PYS series is concluded, could go through for the different servers, all of them. I mean, we've got all the www.whatblitz.com.eu.na whatever .asia. Go through and then make an Excel table, something really simple. Teams, like number of teams with 100% win rate accounts, like with one 100% win rate account, with two, with three. And then, I mean, you wouldn't even need to do an analysis just to see what proportion of teams are. It would take some like monkey work, some doing, like just kind of going through and manually finding these teams. But to understand what proportion of teams are attempting to game their win rate, which I no longer blame anyone for, to be honest, because like you said, we know it exists. Like we've had 3 months to try and make a 100% win rate account to just stick in to boost your chances. Not condoning, I'm just saying you can't be. I'm not mad at them anymore. But then if you have a proportion of teams that are doing this, you can then work out what percentage of fixtures are being impacted. And that will tell you how compromised your tournament is. And I mean, this is like, it's a relatively small amount of money at the end of the day that's on the line when you consider the amount of time that's involved to win it.
Exactly.
Like, you know, it's like 300 or 500 euros per player if you win. But okay, so like, what's that per hour for all of the PYS, for all of the top 8, for the and like yada yada yada? Like it's not a lot. I don't even want to work it out. I can just tell you it's not a lot of money.
It's not.
And that's
it's
just
not
if you
massive,
include it. That's just if you include raw tournament time.
Yeah, that's not.
I don't
even
think it's
taking
about the winning.
It's not even taking.
I don't think
into
it's
account
about the
tax.
winning, though, is it?
No.
Well, the thing is, it's not necessarily about the winning, but what we have is, and Blitz is kind of like it's an esport, but it's not like a big esport. But if we distill it down to the basics, we have a competition, a publicly open competition, which has got formal rule sets and real money prizes on the line, which is being run by a multi-billion-dollar company, and there's a system in place where you can exploit loopholes within the tournament format, such that that you can discredit tournament ability and you can influence the outcome or the structure of the tournament, how the games and battles resolve. If you look at like the tournament brackets, like for example, the Vibes clan, they're facing a top tier team before well ahead of the time that they should do, and then there's a team that they know that they can beat that's kind of skipping that step just because, like, you know, they automatically get bumped up to the next round. And this is that for me is problematic when you have an official tournament which has got real money on the line. Now, I mean, no one's going to kick up a fuss about 500 euros,
But if
like
it was
on balance.
but
That's
if
why
it
I'm
was-
saying,
if it's like Fortnite and it's 2 million, it's a bit of a different kettle of fish.
yeah.
But I just want to
Like
go back.
there are some.
I just want to go back a little bit to Vibes. Now, Bear, don't take this the wrong way. Vibes, at the moment, probably not a top 8 clan, but certainly a top 16. And if your attitude is, well, with the win rate manipulation, it's not worth us taking part. It's just a waste of our time and effort. Imagine what it's like for new clans trying to break in. I mean, it's going to be even worse. It's going to be even worse because we need clans like Vibes to challenge from the Challenges Tour to the top 8, and we need the new clans in the lower echelon challenging in for that top 16, etc., etc. And if the top 16 teams are getting fed up with it and not even going to try to challenge because of the manipulations going on and the poor seeding, we haven't got a hope in our chance of getting the grassroots teams coming through, surely.
I mean,
Well-
even. Sorry, go on.
I've got a reroll account, you see. I could put my reroll account in and do what they do, but why would you want to?
That's a good point.
You know, to me, it's just breaking the rules. It's completely unsporting for me. It is. Yeah, people want to work the way out to get in the money. The money has never been a question for us because
No.
at the end of the day, we're not good enough to win the money.
But even
We
if
do
you
it
were-
for the.
But even if you were,
Yeah.
I don't think most of the clans do it for the money because, as Rolling said, the money. When you look at all the blood, sweat, and tears they put in, the money's just not worth it, is
Yeah.
it? They do it for the kudos and for the other things that come with being the top team on the server or being in the top 8. So I don't think it's ever done for the money. If it would, they'd all turn around and say the money's pathetic. See ya, thanks a lot, and there'd be no esports at all in Blitz.
I think that the money, it's a nice motivating factor, and of course, like we want to see it increase, and it does add a sort of like even a small amount adds a little bit of gravitas to the tournament, and it like feeds into the bragging rights. I think, but like what you're saying, you know, with teams like that are going into the Challengers Cup and into like, you know, these other divisions below the top 8, like that's a really essential part of the tournament process, because
absolutely.
That is how you develop players, how they get more experience on a particular level where they can learn and grow. And like, I'm sure like if you interview a lot of the, maybe people have forgotten, but like when I was first doing tournaments back in 2016, 17, I was playing with AFK, which is like a 50%. I was calling for a 50% team, and we would win a couple of groups, and then we'd get to like a certain stage and we just get destroyed. And we're like, well, we had fun. But like myself, I went from playing with 50% teams to 60% teams, and I had a brief stint with R2K, and I was like, hi, I'm not good enough to be here. I'm going to become a commentator. So like, but like you need those intermediary is the wrong word. You need a gradient of abilities and teams and people enjoying it and people taking it too seriously and people trying it out for the first time. But then for me, on the one hand, I'm happy, for example, maybe happy is the wrong word, but like I'm happy that there are teams that are like taking a stand against this seeding system, because it's like, well, people give a damn and they're trying to do something about it. But then I'm also sad because like those are good teams with good people that are like denying themselves an experience, and kind of they're shrinking and for good reason, they're kind of shrinking the pool of teams and the potential. Like a team is a 10-man unit. But it's like there are spots on that roster where someone who's not really played with a great team before can say, "Hey, look, I'm a pretty good player. Can you try me out?" And that's where you get your new friendships and your new connections to someone joining a clan and getting on a Discord server. That's where like the Blitz unites or the Blitz connects us, whatever the thing that Wargaming keeps saying comes into play. And I'm sad to hear that Vibes are kind of not participating in this one, but I fully understand why, and I'm kind of proud of them. I'm proud of all the teams that are kind of saying, actually, we're comfortable enough to sit this one out until you fix it. Like, I like that.
No, I totally agree. I mean, but as I said, I go back to it's sad to hear that clans of the caliber of Vibes have that view because of this manipulation, because if that can happen with those type of clans, then you've got clans further down the list who aren't in the same ballpark saying, well, there's just no point because, you know, we're new to the scene, we just want to have fun. As you said earlier, we want to get a group of friends round, have a 2-hour session, and we go out in the first 5 minutes. What's the point of all that?
If you think we know, like Vibes are quite a well-known clan, and there are others, I'm sure. So if we're aware of them, like how many clans,
we're not aware of,
but clans that we're not aware of that just like are just not even showing up. Like that's there are just so many things like we don't even know what we're missing out on, possibly.
Absolutely, and that's the concern because, you know, I think it's fair to say that everybody involved in the tours, to be fair, be it from Wargaming side, the streamers, the top players, even to those who are just coming into the tour scene, everybody wants to make a success of it, and they want to see it grow, and they want to see more money thrown at it for the winning pools, etc., etc., etc. So nobody is actually wanting the tours to fail. But we've got to a point, as I said earlier, the game has evolved, but the developer of the game, the organizer, the ruler, whatever you want to call Wargaming, is not in step with that evolution, I don't think. And they need to start thinking a little bit more outside the box, maybe, on this one. Because, look,
I don't think there should even be...
Go on, mate.
Seeds. I don't even think there should be seeds or anything. It should be a straight draw like the FA Cup used to be. That's what I think it should be, because then the really bad teams might get in one side of the draw and the really good teams might get in the other.
No, well, that's
That's how it should be. Like the
like the random draws in the FA Cup.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Why should they be seeded?
Well, I think if you could do something like that, like I mean, if you had, 'cause that could be quite. I mean, not to like throw a complete spanner in the works, but I think a football match it's 90 minutes, and it's a pretty good idea of which team is better than the other team. You know, in Blitz, like a best of three is not a great. Like it'll be right more often than not, but it's also like there's so many things that can go wrong. Like, I would be open to having like a big FA Cup style, all the teams in. It's one great big series of single eliminations, completely random, but you do it in like over a month, and it's like a best of each fixture is a best of 7, for example.
Well, I was going to say best of 5.
Like that
but best
could-
of 7 would work because best of 7 would probably take
Best-
too long in the day, but best of 5 would probably be more amenable. I don't know, because you've got more gameplay to prove your worth and adapt. Best of 3, you're right. It's just it's in miss. I mean,
It's brutal.
It's brutal. You lose
Yeah.
one game. You try a little bit harder in the next game, and you lose that game, and then you're out. Whereas best of 5, best of 7 would be ideal, but best of 5, at least you've got that little bit of an extra comfort
Breathing
zone
room.
to get into it. And
Which I think is
Go on.
I was going to say it's important in games like Blitz where there is an element of RNG because you need repetition to average out the random number instances and
Yes.
let skill be the broadest determining factor. So, I mean, an ammo rack is the single purest example of a game flipping event that is not. Well, I mean, there's an element of skill, but there's also a large element of luck. Like, so the skill is in connecting the shot on the ammo rack. Assuming you were purposefully aiming for the ammo rack. I mean, the pike of an IS-7 is a pretty good example. Like everyone knows the big box that goes boom is hiding under that.
Yeah.
So, but the chance of the ammo rack actually detonating is very, very small. But if it happens in a tournament battle, like if you lose one tank in the first minute, like before there's really been any trading or movement or map control, whatever, that's huge. And that's in a best of 3, that can be enough to cost you the series.
Well, it
but
did.
in a best of
it
5,
it cost Loka in if you go back to the Blitz Cup, which the initial rounds were, I believe, best of 3, if I remember rightly, and an RG lost connection on Middleburg, and against Raid, he had no control over his tank, completely lost his connection. His tank just rolled through the sea cap, carried on rolling, and obviously Raid were just able to annihilate him. Loka did their best to react, but he's out the game. They're a tank down, they're a lot of HP down, and now they've had to play their hand, and that's a game that they were never going to win. And we're in a best of 3 scenario. I mean, that's a huge deal. It's a massive deal. Massive. But in a best of 5 or even a best of 7 scenario, it's not as impactful on the overall scene, so to speak. And I would love for the Pro Series and the challenges to be best, primarily best of 7, best of 9, but the PYS to start moving towards best of 5, best of 7, because the idea is, it's a tournament. It's a tournament, and you don't want it over in like 2 minutes. At least give people a scouting chance. But again, evolution, and again, they've got to catch up.
so do we think they're going to fix this 100%? Because they said they're going to try and do it by Twister, by autumn season, if I've read correctly. So
I
2
think
questions. One, do we think they're actually going to?
Well,
Do you think they're going to manage it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, reading
And 2,
between the lines, I think they're hoping to get it in sooner, but they're giving themselves some breathing space, which is why they're aiming for Twister. Their aim is to get it sooner. And when I initially spoke to one of the 2 resources in the tournament side back in December, that particular person was optimistic it was going to be pretty soon. It wasn't going to be ready for winter. It was unlikely going to be ready for spring, but they were hoping to get something ready. And I think now they've realised that they need a bit more breathing space. It's definitely going to come. It's just a question of when. That's the thing. And the argument.
And so the second, sorry,
go on.
Sorry, the second question. The second question is: so okay, we know something's, or we think we're hopeful something's coming. The question is, what is coming? Because that's the other. And you might know because you're closer to it than anyone else here. But and if you do, you don't have to say, and you don't even have to say if you do or don't know.
I think they've made it public to an extent, and it's going to be based on battle counts as well. So they're going to have weighted towards battle counts. So the question I've asked, which I haven't had an answer on yet, when you say weighted towards battle counts, do you mean random games or do you mean overall? Because you can still do 1,000 games in rating and have a 100% win rate. So
there's there's another. I mean, I think that's better. But I think then that's also not a perfect system. One, because it doesn't use tournament data, and like two, you've pointed out, like rating battles and whatever else. But three, there's probably a lot of people in the chat that might fall under this category. There are people with legacy stats. Like that is to say that I've been playing for 5 or 6 years, and for the first 3 years, I played however many tens of thousands of battles at a 55% win rate. Yes. And if you go and check the 30-day stats over the last half a year, they're at a very consistent 70-75.
Yeah.
So how is that going to feed into that weighting system?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one, and I don't know. As I said, and I don't know the answer on what battles they're taking into account. Is it going to be total battle count or included? Because if you look at your garage, it tells you how many battles you've actually played, including tournaments. Funnily enough, it actually tells you that. It shows you overall battles, tournament battles, ratings battles. So it tells you, it gives you a breakdown. So I don't know which battles they're looking at. I'm assuming they're going to be looking at what's now called regular, but we all know still is random. Assuming that they're going to base it on that, with the amount of battles that you've played in regular, and the win rate that you've then got. So, and they'll weight it that way. So the 100% win rate no longer has the same overall impact. And I think that's the way they're looking at doing it. And the reason why it's taken them so long, again, this is what Wargaming have fed out now publicly, is that they just don't have the resources to do it manually. They need the algorithm. They need to develop something to check literally all the teams across all 4 servers. Now, again, I may be naive. I'm sort of buying into that. I have no reason to doubt them, insofar as they've also publicly stated they too want it gone. They want it eliminated, but they want it done in such a way that it's not going to screw everything up too much. So I believe them when they generally say they want it gone. I believe them when they generally say that they're looking at a way to eliminate the impact that 100% win rate accounts have. I don't fully believe when it's going to be implemented, because it's here, there, and everywhere, and they don't know themselves, I don't think. And I think that's the crucial part. When is it going to happen? Have we got to deal with this for the remainder of this year, not just this season, but this actual year?
Doesn't Blitzstars do that, though?
In what respect?
In respect that you don't get a Blitzstars rating or anything like that if you're under 5,500 games.
That is true, but Blitzstars can also be a bit skewed because, for example, I'll give you an example. I tested the Kanonenjäger Panzer. I tested it. And that was a tank in test. That is not the tank we've got now in the game. I've got it in my garage. I've not played it. Yet if you have a look at my Blitzstars, I'm a super unicorn in the tank because Blitzstars have taken the data from the test that it did. So it can screw up in that respect as well. So whilst Blitzstars is a fantastic platform, it's brilliant and it gives you lots and lots of data, it's not perfect either, and that's one of the problems.
The issue with Win 8 and WN8, WN7 is those are like they're good for what they are designed for, which is showing your relative ability in a tank. Compared, so like for example, it's to do WN8 is calculated, if I've understood it correctly and I'm remembering it correctly, it's to do with your performance in that tank compared to everyone else's performance in that tank.
Correct.
And I was having a discussion with someone recently, and we were talking about like if you go on BlitzStars, the CIS server has like the top. If you include all of the regions, CIS servers has like the people with the minimum number of battles, 100, to get on the WN8 leaderboard for a particular tank, and they are like 25-30% higher in terms of their WN8 performance. But that is an artifact of the server population size. So you have to think, okay, so the CIS server is like 3-4 times bigger than EU. I mean, and we're looking at like concurrent players. We're not even looking at total number of players. Like it's much bigger. So the larger population means that your bell curve, your standard distribution of abilities, you have higher extremes. And even like if you consider the chance of a Super Unicum player, like how often they're going to meet people of different abilities. Super Unicum on Russia is going to statistically, by necessity, encounter a higher number or be more likely to encounter lower ability players. And you can look at the higher win rates, like the high win rates on Asia are lower than high win rates on NA. High win rates on NA are lower than high win rates on EU. High win rates on EU are lower than high win rates on CIS server. And this is due to population size and how that feeds into who you're meeting and how often you're meeting players of different abilities in battles. And so when you look at WN8 on the Russian server, like the midpoint should be the same for all the servers. Like average WN8 should be average WN8. But there are so many more people on Russia playing so much more badly that even if you're playing at like a similar level on Russia, like super Unicum, you're going to get a higher WN8 because your data is being compared to a larger pool with more shit at the far end.
Yeah.
Sorry for swearing. Compared to the Asia and NA things. So it like we have to be, and this is why I think like when you're trying to seed abilities or you're trying to find something that's representative of who is the best tournament team, like WN8 is great for telling you like who's the best in this tank on this server. And win rate is great for telling you how good you are in public matches. But like we should be very careful taking data and statistical representations of abilities in different game modes and scenarios and then trying to translate them into abilities in something which is completely different at the end of the day. Because like I'm probably everyone watching here, you don't need me to tell you that there are like teams which are extremely good in tournaments but look worse on paper than their opponents.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where, to an extent, I do feel for wargaming to an extent, because again, I go back to, I think everybody involved in the tournament scene who takes the tournament scene seriously, be that quick tours or your season coins or even these PYSs and pro challengers tours, want to see growth in the tour side. And for growth to happen, we can't alienate or exclude players. So, to an extent, wargaming have a balancing act of trying to entice people into the tours without not enticing them. And at the moment, they've buggered it up. I'll be honest. They have buggered it up with the 100% win rate thing, because it is putting people off rather than enticing them in. But I can see that there is ambition behind them, realistically. We've now got 4 tournaments. We had 3 for a long time. We've now got 4 with the winter. We've got more investment in, okay, it's only in like avatars and boosters, in trying to get people to come and watch these streams and stuff like that. And you know, Wargaming have introduced the clan rewards to try and get more clans together. And maybe they'll introduce one of the missions to, I don't know, being a QT or something, who knows. So there is ambition behind the scenes from them, I feel. It's just, as Rowling said earlier, it's getting that bureaucratic leviathan out of its sleeping slumber. and that's where it becomes difficult.
I mean, it's true. Like the clan missions, awesome. These battle pass events, like such good value for money, like €5, and they're like, okay, here's a bunch of premium content for you. But like, I mean, and you don't have to play too many battles within that month period. And you know, if you like, and lots of people are getting up in arms about, oh, you're doing them too often. You're doing them like every month, and I'm like, well, like, you know, if I'm busy for work one month and I said, like, well, I'm not going to have time to play, I don't have to worry about doing that one because I can jump on the next one next month. So I would agree with you. Like, they are doing a lot, and behind the scenes, and this, in the same way, like a bureaucratic Leviathan is very slow to stop, like very slow to start. Once it gets going, you know, like it can get a lot of stuff done quite well. So I really have my fingers crossed that whatever they implement, like it's good for another couple of years until the player base breaks it again. Because like we're probably going to do that. We've been really consistently good.
And I have no doubt in that, because when you get into sports of any description, and at the end of the day, we're talking about professional gaming here, because this is professional gaming at this level, then there are always going to be looking for ways and means to not break the rules but bend them to gain an advantage. That's part of the course. It's part of the course of sports. I mean, you just look at any sport. Take football, for example. The ball goes out of play for the throw-in, and they always gain a couple of yards before they throw it back in. Or, you know, take the corners, or take the tackles. Sometimes they go down looking like they've been shot from Vasily Zaitsev in Stalingrad, you know, the way they're tackled. And really, it's just like a glancing blow sometimes. So every sportsman at professional level does their best to try and manipulate something to gain an advantage without strictly breaking the rules. So yeah, I fully anticipate whatever is brought in, the community at the high level will find a loophole somewhere and exploit it, until that loophole is then closed down also. No system is going to be perfect. No system. There's always going to be very clever people out there who will see that there's a bit of a dent in that armor and they'll exploit it. And that's to be expected. And this is why I don't necessarily jump on clans who use these loopholes, because if they find them, kudos to them for finding them. And until wargaming closed them down, then, you know, is it that the clans using and exploiting this loophole are geniuses and the rest of us are stupid, or is it that, you know, some other reason? And I think, and I've always said this, the developer, the organizer, the owner is the one that closes this stuff down. No choice. They have to bring in a rule to close it.
Well, that's what, because taking the exploits into the game, because it's interesting. We're kind of talking like meta above the meta in the sense at the moment, like seeding groups, and like it's such a evolution behind. Like back in 2016, like some bright spark said, "Hey, if we take lots of Russian mediums, we've got more DPM and we can kill the enemy faster," and that was groundbreaking. Back then, like people were like, "Oh wow, genius!" Like we've come a long way from there.
Yes.
But even back in the 2018, like that was the season of the boosts when Raid, Messi fought Despair, and when that was first happening on stream, like the chat was like, "Are they allowed to do that? Can they do that?" There was a grey area for a time there, because like technically it's an exploit, but it's an exploit because they can do it and they worked out how to do it. And I mean, like, I loved it. I thought it was great. And it just added like another sort of dimension to the game. And wargaming kind of came, they didn't say you can't do it. They didn't really say much about it, so people did it. But then what they've done is they've like silently gone in, and Maddox is still probably up in arms about it, calling them wargaming, because like they've created lots of invisible, unclimbable things that you can't, no matter how many mouse tanks you shove behind the poor little Batchat, he just won't go on top of that hill anymore. You know, they've made these invisible elements in the game that are 100% impassable. And so, like, you know, how much longer until we find there are other things in the game which might be considered in-game exploits, but then are used by players? I'm really like, for me, I think it's fascinating because it's like people work really hard to figure some of those boosts out.
Well, they do, and it's not just that. It's for example. I mean, you've been doing the tour scene for. I mean, you were involved in the tour scene for a long time, and you've seen the change. I mean, when they brought in the hit point buff for the heavies, we saw a distinct change in the meta from a medium meta to a very heavy meta now. In fact, TDs are hardly ever used now. You may see them roll out on a few maps. And then we have the introduction of the Vicars, and you know, you get to see the Vicars more, but it's predominantly heavy meta. IS4s, E5s, Mouses, thrown in VK90 or E100s here, there and everywhere. But it's majority of the time it's going to be an IS4 and an E5. So we've seen it, we do see these evolutions in the tour scene as the clans always look for ways to present something better and to get that advantage somewhere in their strats, in their meta selection, or even with boostings, which has been closed down. So we're always going to get that, and it's part of the scene. It's always going to be part of the scene. And no doubt, you know, one of the hopes of wargaming was by giving the grill the spore liner, etc., maybe it will start. TDs will start to get an introduction back into the tour scene. You just never know what their overall aims and ambitions are. It'll be interesting to see, but I think you're right. No matter what they bring in, there'd be exploitation, and rightly so, because that's what sports is all about. We want it's not just about the gaming side, the people playing it; it's the audience as well. And I keep saying to a lot of people, for the bigger rewards, for the bigger payouts, you need more people watching. And you need more people watching, so the sponsors say there's a big audience, I want to throw money at this to get my product out there, and it's all a catch-22. Without the viewers, it doesn't grow. Without the clans and the players, it doesn't grow. Without any of that, you're not going to attract the sponsors, the prize money doesn't grow. Without the growth, it becomes stagnated. So there's always going to be, the viewers want to see the boosts like Messi, and they want to see these bits and bobs, these strange gameplays, these interesting metas, these interesting strats. And I streamed CIS server in winter for the Blitz Cup thing as an English speaker, and watching, I think it was C4, I could be mistaken, it could have been Mercy, taking 3 or 4 Mouses out into the desert on desert sands was just absolutely amazing to watch. And winning the game by doing like a rush job, an iron fist, with like 3 Mouses in the desert going towards the A-cap. I mean, who does this mentality? Or C4 taking 7 auto-loaders on Middleburg and going nowhere near the C-cap, taking them all through the city, avoiding the A-cap, avoiding the B-cap, completely bum-rushing Mercy and annihilating them as they went up the hill. These are the things that the audience want to see. They want to see this stuff. They want the entertainment. They don't want to see 5 minutes of camping on Camp Stiller followed by 2 minutes of mayhem. They want to see 2 minutes of mayhem. This is the thing. And I think...
So you want to see 2 minutes of mayhem,
yeah,
followed by like an intense one-on-one brawl between the team captains.
Absolutely.
That's the perfect match.
Exactly. And that's
Like
what
the
people want to see.
ending in the Legion game.
Yeah.
Exactly, on Canal.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the audience want to see. They want to see that. They want to see that exciting side of it. Coupled with, they want to see how these top players, and this is where wargaming comes in, they want to see the top players playing those tanks. And that's where wargaming's marketing comes in, because they're literally this is why the T22 will never be banned from it, because the more times the T22 rolls out and you get to see one of the super duper unicums playing it at the top levels of the game, the more the average Joe wants that tank. So wargaming should know, it's an amazing marketing trick for them, They are getting it out there to an audience who are seeing what the tanks are capable of doing. And they shouldn't deny that. But at the same token, they've got to nurture the tour scene. Don't shoot yourselves in the foot. You know, embrace your free marketing effectively. And to do that, well, there are things that they've got to change, as I keep saying back. It's evolved. They've got to play catch up a little bit.
I think it will be it'll be interesting to see how this season plays out, and whether like the course of events in this season will spur wargaming to maybe take more expedited action than what their current position is. Because like you pointed out, like they have shown the ability and the community engagement skills. Like they fixed the ticket farming issue. They have they've addressed quite a few things quite effectively that the community's asked for recently, which is pretty good and surprising, very surprising. But so I'm thinking, you know, if Stijn sent like an Excel sheet.
Yeah,
I think he sent it to you as well.
Yeah.
Food.
I've seen
I mean,
that.
there are 15 teams on the EU server. That's 15 out of 100. There are 15% of the teams in this PYS are using 100% win rate accounts.
That's staggering, really, isn't it?
That's twice the number of teams as there are groups. So each group, statistically as a minimum, is, I mean, on average, maybe is a better way of describing it, is having like this is influencing the seeding in quite a big way. Potentially. I mean, and it's 15 teams with 21 100% win rate accounts, and there's SAW S4W, which are using 3, and then there's one of the APA teams which is using 3. The other APA team is using 2, and then there's a whole host of teams which are using 1, 2. And like I'm putting it out there that like I am not holding the teams responsible for this. Like I'm not being disparaging towards them for doing this at this point in the game, because like everyone's had the same information, everyone's had the same amount of time and opportunity to generate this, and whether you agree with that or not is one thing, and whether you think it's good for the game, bad for the game, moral, immoral, or whatever is another. But like you can't really you can't down talk them for doing this. You can say like, I don't think this is very nice of you or very good, but ultimately I don't blame them. But what we can see is like this is the first PYS.
Absolutely.
And this is, I mean, even if we look at the rate at which this is happening. So like from when the first 100% win rate account came in, okay. And then like what was the next tournament, how many, and then how many, and then how many. And now we've got this, which is 15 teams, 15% of the teams participating on the EU server in the PYS event are using this loophole.
Yeah.
Which is having an effect. Now in PYS 2 of this season, are we going to have more or less? I would say we're probably going to have more.
Well, I think you're right there. I think we are probably going to have more.
What if all the 30% teams, Brian, did it?
I mean,
if they could have 7 accounts where they're 100% or 80%, and they could all be 30% players.
Yeah, it will get it's going to completely disrupt the seeding, and maybe like, you know, it won't, it will just make a hot mess, you know? Yeah. I think it's someone there was someone in the live chat that made a very good comment. Sorry, Fujit. They said that this win rate thing is having more of an impact on NA because there are less teams.
Correct.
And also like smaller groups or less groups, and probably the same on Asia is so on CIS, like they're up in arms about it, but it's diluted quite significantly. And on EU, like we've got quite a lot of it happening, but on NA, like it could be having Like, I mean, you know, you're following that scene a lot more than I am. So I really think we should start, like, what Stin's done. I haven't verified the numbers he's provided, but if we can do that for all the other servers, we're going to be able to build a very strong case towards wargaming to say, like, look at what is happening in your tournament. Do you think we can fix it a little bit faster? Like, somehow?
Well, I was about to say that.
thing
I mean,
is-
going back to what Bear said, what if the lower win rate teams now start using it? I think that would be the right thing to do. Because that would make, as Rowling says, such a mess of the whole thing that action would have to be taken sooner rather than later. So I actually think that would be absolutely a fantastic thing to do. If suddenly a 30% win rate clan decided to stick in 400% win rate players, that would be great, because it would screw everything up. It would screw everything up, to be honest with you.
The worst thing is that generally 90% of the players that are doing the 100 win rate thing are good players anyhow. They're well over 60% most of the players anyhow.
Well,
Yeah.
but that's the thing. I mean, certain clans are exploiting it because, even if you just look at, for example, the seeding for tomorrow, okay, and I'll just give you an example. So tomorrow, we've got first off the bat, Endgame facing Vale, straight off the bat, one of the first games in the group. So either Endgame or Vale are going to miss out on cups because that's the 1/16th. Yet the clans using 100% win rates have got to buy into the quarterfinal, all of them. So that's where the mockery starts to come in. You see, it doesn't really overly affect everything in the group stages of PYS as such, but it has a massive impact in the final stage of PYS.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing that because if you just have a look at previous skill for final stage tomorrow, all the clans with 100% win rate accounts have got to buy, all of them. They've all got to buy. Whereas clans that are not, they're facing tricky opponents. And as I said, I mean, either Endgame or Vale are going to miss out on a shed load of cups tomorrow, and with the disparity between Endgame and the rest of the group, and I don't mean that in the bad way because, I'm in Vale and, they're a fantastic team and I say that with no bias. But there's such a gap between Endgame and, I would argue, everybody else at the moment that, Endgame are basically going to go through tomorrow and Vale are going to lose out despite the fact of having a good win rate. But they're going to lose out because teams with 100% win rates get the bye. That's the thing. And that's where it starts having.
Well, the thing is, like, I mean, and it's like Vale, like, and also like the number of cups that you accrue over the numerous PYS tournaments that are going to be held. Like, we saw in the winter season, like, there's a very fine line between making the top 8 and not making the top 8 and making the top 16 and not making the top 16. And one bad tournament, one bad seeding in one final stage tournament, like meeting Endgame in the first round when actually it should be someone else, or maybe, just getting one stage further along, but you don't get that because someone that's got a bye just simply because they've gained their win rate. That's hugely problematic.
It is.
It's crazy.
And I go back to the winter season because at one stage there was talk of, for example, my clan Vale using a 100% win rate account. And when you start seeing seeding like this, whereby, you are effectively a top 8 clan, okay, and you are being drawn against the number 1 on the server in the opening game, why wouldn't you then scratch your head and say, hang on a minute, why shouldn't we not use 100% win rate accounts to get a bye so we avoid endgame, etc., etc.? This is what happens. It's a spiraling effect. And I can't blame the clans who then have this sort of thought process that we're being screwed over somewhere. And it's not right because, we were top 8 in winter. In fact, we went on to become top 6. Yet now we're being screwed over in the very opening stages of this season by getting endgame really quickly. It's not fair, and you've got to look at it from the other clan's perspective, and that's when the disparity starts coming in, and this is where clans start saying, well, hang on a minute, it's not fair that clans are using 100% win rate accounts to get these buys, and therefore ergo we think it's unsporting. But on the same token, you can't fully blame the clans for using them because it's not been shut down, and then you can't blame clans who get crappy MM and seeding like this to then consider using them themselves. And it all becomes an absolute mess, to be honest with you. Because you're now not, it's no longer about, we got there purely on skill. It's no longer about that. And it just becomes messy. And this is why people are up in arms about it. And I can understand that from all quarters. Bear, you're saying that Vibes are not taking part because of the 100 win rate, fiasco, and you don't want to stoop to that level. And I get that, admire that, and I think that's a great stance to take. But on the same token, I don't blame the clans like APRS4W for using them because it's not been shut down. But then I don't blame clans like, for example, if they'll decide to use one because they're pissed off we keep facing endgame in the opening match in the final stage, considering it as well. And this is where it becomes a bit of an issue for the tour scene, in my view.
Yeah, but the problem is with that Fugit, then endgame could do it then.
And
it's just a long-running thing, and everybody could do it eventually, and then there'll be 3 or 4, and everybody does the same thing, and it's just
stupid.
It's just
it dilutes the tour scene completely, and it becomes a problem. And maybe I'm being naive. I don't think for the one single iota that is Wargaming's intention. I don't think that's their intention here. I think they want a successful tour scene, but they're playing catch up. It's a bit slow, and I don't think, just like the ATGMs, I don't think they fully realise the impact it actually has. Not fully. They realise there's a problem, they know there's an issue, but like ATGMs, they haven't seen the actual massive impact, because clans are using it just the same way as ATGMs. Players were playing it, and a lot of players were playing it. And so you scratch your head, why is everybody complaining about these missile tanks when they're the most played tank? Makes no sense. Same with this. Why is everybody complaining about 100% win rate accounts when clans are using 100% win rate accounts? Makes no sense. And that's the thing. There's just this disconnect of not drilling down to see the actual impact. And as you said there, Bear, it spirals to the point where it becomes a nightmare. It just becomes completely a stupid tour thing, and everybody loses interest. Everybody.
Yeah. If I may add on to that, Fugit, it's MJ. Hey, MJ. I'm on the NA. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you, mate.
I was going to say that on NA, like I said in the chat earlier, that because the general amount of teams on the NA server is so much lower, it makes a drastic impact on just the outcome of these brackets. So essentially what you're seeing, and I've been looking around, I've been looking to see what these teams are doing. For Prove Your Skill 2, you're going to see a dramatic increase in just these reroll accounts being put on the team. And, I don't blame any of the teams for doing it because, for example, very anecdotal, but my team, right off the bat in quarterfinals for the first group stage yesterday night, we went against the Rain team.
Yeah, because I'm in Joker too, remember. I'm also in Joker, so I was keeping an eye on that. But yeah, we had Rain off the bat. It's like, what? How?
Now, granted, I don't think Rain is doing spring, fully seriously. So we did manage to squeeze out a win against, to win against them and continue for the rest of the night. But it's just a perfect example of how these boosting win rates just kind of screws over teams that don't do well really in pubs, but as long as this semi good team gets 2 100% win rates accounts in, they they get a bye. They not only get a bye into the quarterfinals, but then they also go against, sometimes easier teams.
Yeah.
I mean, coming from a place where I'm just saying, this is Jake, by the way. I'm in like a team that's probably, we're trying to go for like top 8, and it's going to be probably unlikely, but we are forced in. Like, I'll admit it, we use hard rerolls. We don't use like 100%, but we use really hard rerolls, and that's simply because we're not going to stand a chance in the seedings at all unless we actually have. We're simply forced into using them, and that means you have to like rotate players out every tournament because we don't have the spots for people. And like, I think it's more that it's you can't really blame us for doing it because it's simply just become a necessity now if you want to do well in NA especially. I think
that goes back to Rolling's point.
Definitely.
I mean, you can't blame the clan. In fact, I'm going to let Rolling speak because it's his point.
Yeah, you can't. I can't. I at this point, like, everyone's had the issue with exploiting a loophole, blind for want of a better word, is that like you're catching everyone off balance and you create a disparity between what teams could or couldn't have done, have or haven't done. Going into this particular season, everyone's had the information available to them. This is how the seeding works. This is how you can manipulate it. Wargaming have said, we're not fixing it. We're not making a ruling on it. You can do it. So tragedy of the commons, if I don't do it, someone else will, and I'll suffer. And if you've got like a pretty decent team, but you're kind of floating around the high 80s, low 60% win rates, you're going to get shafted because you're going to meet a top tier team very early on. And that is because there are other teams that are skipping the seeding, which is forcing your seeding down. That's what, with the loopholes, with ticket farming, you're putting your team into the next stage at the expense of other teams. With win rate seeding, you're putting your team into a favorable position at the expense of putting other teams into a disadvantaged position. So, like, for me, like, and it's the same with, it's like a arms race, nuclear treaties and whatever. Like, we've got them, you've got them, like, let's not use them, but like, you need them because everyone else has them. The same with 100% win rate accounts. And someone else made a very good point where they said, the only people that don't need to do this are the truly top tier teams, where they're like, well, like, we're just going to beat whoever we come up against, unless it's like another team like us, but that's very unlikely. So again, the EU example is Endgame. They've got a naturally very high win rate anyway. It's terrifying. But also, like, at the moment and over the last 2 years, they've been playing at a kind of cut above consistently, shall we say. So they're not really having to sort of worry too much about that. Although, like, we're seeing other teams now really stepping up and some really good rosters coming in. But for everyone else, everyone that's not a consistent top 8, top 4 participant, I think maybe top 4, like the kind of the regular top 4 spots teams are kind of like, they feel pretty secure and safe. Like, they just have to make it into the top 8. They'll be all right. Everyone else, like, we saw, like, in FBI, Raid, there are loads of other teams which, like, have, like, can be very good and can really struggle as a result of, like, what's going on in the seeding. Now, to further complicate things, because we know at the moment that the main tournament, I love a bit of complication, it's brilliant. But I mean, so but this is because, again, blaming teams are like same information, same options available. Some teams are doing it, some teams are not. What about running 2 teams? Because we know that a clan can only submit 1 team into the top 8 if it makes that spot, for example. And my good friends in Imor have frequently run 2 teams, and it's helped them get into the top 8 because you have redundancy there. Like, if one team has a bad evening, the other team can be there to pick up cups, and the cups ultimately accrue to the clan rather than an individual team. So overall, the clan can, like, your top team can afford to, like, have a bad night because the second team, if it's good enough, can step in and fill the gap. So you have that as an issue running in parallel. And then just to make an observation, there are some teams which are running 2 teams, some clans running 2 teams, and then are win rate boosting both teams. Yeah. So how do we feel about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the two teams. I mean, I don't necessarily have an issue with running two teams, and I know with some of my research with speaking to the guys on CIS, that would be something that they would kick their heels against if wargaming were to stamp on that, because that is something that is institutional on the CIS server, because clans over there, like clans on all servers, have the ability to have up to 50 players. Yet you're saying that only 10 can ever play at one time. So the reason they like having their two teams, but again, it's a different scenario in RU, because the scene is so much bigger that they then have 2 or even 3 teams, which is possible, by the way. So the players can play even if they don't get through. It's not just about picking the pieces up if team 1 sort of fails. It's also about getting everybody off the bench so they can keep their teams together. So I don't necessarily have an issue with that. Running 2 or even 3 teams all using 100% win rate accounts, well, that's just taking things to the next level, really. And if that were to ever happen on, say, a server like NA, which MJ points out is a smaller base, it would be a disaster. It would be an absolute disaster.
Well, the funny thing is, it's already starting.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to
Well,
look
there you
forward
go.
to that.
Let us
It's so
observe
dry.
the
It's just like
chaos.
it's so dry and so like just kind of resigned. It's like, yeah, it's happening. It's
Yeah.
we're already there.
Jeez.
Yeah, if I looked at the teams last night before we started, our first day of previous skill, and you already saw multiple teams from basically, they're the same clan, but all with 100% or rerolls. Not that I'm not saying that it's their fault. I mean, like, if you were in their position, I would, they would do the same, because at the end of the day, you don't want to go against top 4 teams right off the bat in quarterfinals and then not get to the second day. So I understand why they do it. And, I'm just pointing out what's there in front of me.
No doubt, on a clan war scene that is significantly smaller, and even if it was to do in Asia, which is even smaller than NA, it's a recipe for disaster. It really is, because then you've got the seeding just gone to pot completely. To an extent, EU can sort of deal with it. To an extent, it still has an impact, and it still has a massive impact, especially when you start drilling down into the final stage, as we've seen. And on RU, it doesn't really have an impact, and they can deal with it massively, especially in the group stages, because it's just so big. But on the smaller servers, yeah, it really is a recipe for disaster. And this is why it needs to be stamped out, this 100% win rate thing, because let's just say, because you are entitled, it's not just 2 teams, you are entitled to put 3 teams in, and if you're a clan with 50
I think you
players,
can put his.
well, you can put as many as you
5.
want in, can't you? Yeah. If your clan of 50 players, just recruit 40.
Can we try and?
rates. Oof.
I was gonna say, like, can we not just like as a just to make a point? I'm sure like everyone would chip in and make a reroll. Like, I'm sure we could make a clan with 50, 100% win rates and just like stick in
them all
5 teams.
Yeah.
Stick in 5 teams and be like, wait.
Now you're just giving them ideas. You're giving them bad ideas.
I mean,
And then not turn up.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And you still,
We've made our point. We don't want to disrupt anything. Carry on.
but we
Yeah,
still get
that
the
would
cups. We still get the cups from the quarterfinal, which is nice. Yeah, lovely. And this is the thing. And this is what I'm saying. Where I don't think wargaming fully, at this moment in time, understand the overriding impact. And the reason I say that is because in rolling, I mean, you're closer to this than virtually any of us. I go back to the ATGM issue. I don't think they understood the impact that ATGMs were having. They realised that there was a little bit of an undercurrent in the community, but what do they care? Because lots of people are playing the tanks, and if it was that bad, people wouldn't play them. Not really understanding the actual problem with the tank, which is, 99.9% of all the tanks in the game have to break cover to shoot. 0.01% don't. I mean, it's just, and I think it's the same.
I mean that that ties in with the understanding of and a deep, sort of a knowledgeable understand. Like the ATGMs was just simply a lack of, because the people that almost universally, the people said ATGMs were bad, were the people that were at the top of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not including myself in that. I'm just saying, like, most of the people that supported kind of the direction I was pushing wargaming in were from the tournament and the very, very high skill level community. And like in wargaming, like the people that we interact with to play the game, like a lot of them don't play it very much. There's a few that do play it quite a lot, or that they do play it but at a very sort of superficial level. I would say probably the only person that I'm aware of in the wargaming staff that like plays the game, it is no skill, just luck. The Ukrainian guy who had the YouTube channel and came into wargaming. But there is I'm not saying anyone is a yes man, but there basically, if you look at the people's opinions and the position that advice is coming in from, if you run a company and you have people that don't want to rock the boat because very fairly their salary is connected to, like the organization, you have people that are less critical, and even like the objective of certain divisions and elements within a company is always going to be business first, game experience second. People that are very vocal in the community from a more neutral perspective, particularly the CCs, and particularly in the case of Blitz, where being a CC is just a hobby. There are very few people that have turned it into like a sort of a lucrative revenue stream. There are a few. But when you have people that are approaching that by dedicating time and energy and all the effort they can muster, and that advice is like, they're not trying to improve their bottom line. They're not trying to do anything other than improve the game they love. Like, I would always consider that advice to be more valuable. But like, if you want to improve the game, that's where you go. And if you want to improve your business model, then maybe, you consult the accounts department. I think with the ATGMs, there was just a sort of a fundamental, detailed lack of game knowledge. They didn't understand why ATGMs were bad. What's wrong with being shot when you're behind cover? It's like, I'm sorry, what? If I have to explain that to you, like, there's a disconnect that I can't cross. And it's the same thing in tournaments. It's the same thing in tournament battles. Like, there are people that don't understand like how strong a tournament team is. Like, you could take a middling, you could take a top 30 tournament team from EU, all on voice comms, and you could stick them, like, maybe they're like mid 50% win rates, for example. They would probably beat quite convincingly a completely uncoordinated, random, not communicating group of 60% players. Like, the tournament gameplay strategies, cohesion as a team, executing a plan, working together is such a different gameplay style, and even the amount of effort that it takes to build that community, maintain it, train, and even if some of the wargaming staff like dip into like the 3 versus 3 or the smaller tournaments like for a laugh, they don't have that same player experience from the tournament perspective. And so that's we're talking about all these hurdles, and like it's a bad experience for us as players, as clients, as your customers. We give you money for stuff at the end of the day. We're not happy with this until they start like polling people more rigorously. They're not going to be able to fully appreciate that or understand that unless they are players themselves. And even the ones that are players of the game are not regular or very passionate tournament players. And that's probably where there is that inherent disconnect between wargaming staff and the esports tournament community, because wargaming don't have, to the best of my knowledge, I know that the people are very passionate in the Blitz Kitchen team, like the Alexandra and Ribble and Nopka, like, they're very passionate, but they don't have someone in their esports team who's like, love esports. I want to like make this the biggest event possible. Like, oh, it's great. Like, I want to play tournaments every night of the week. Like, they don't have someone like that.
Or more
They don't have
importantly,
someone who understands.
do they? I don't think they have anybody who actually plays tournaments. Do they?
No, they don't have anyone that plays tournaments regularly. They rely on community feedback. And if you look at the amount of polls that are run on Wargaming's Discord server and through their social media, is this tank balanced? What do you think about this map? What did you think about this update? There are comparatively very few polls to the community. What did you think about this tournament? What did you think about? We've had a few, but I mean, there's definitely a sort of a lack of focus there, or not a lack of focus, but it's certainly a lot less than other elements of the game. And again, like, you can't blame them because the tournament scene is smaller than, than the broader game. But it's never going to grow if you don't invest in it.
Well, I mean, one of the things I'm looking forward to, and for those of you who don't know, by the way, one of the most, not one of, the most recent official CC to be brought on board is actually His Royal Fatness. So, firstly, we've got now a representative from the NA server, which is fantastic. But we've also got not only a fantastic player in his own right and a good YouTuber, but a tournament regular. That brings a different slant to the CC side.
And the missile man.
And he's a missile man as well, but I don't think he's screaming about that too much. Whereas, don't get me wrong, I mean, we've had people involved in tournaments, myself, Amionette, Every Good Name Is Taken, Rolling when he was a CC, and Rib. But, I think with the exception of probably Rolling, I've never played a Pro Tour. I've played Bronze, Silver, etc., etc. I've played plenty of QTs. I've never rolled out and Prove Your Skill. I don't think any of us have. Certainly not, because he's not a touch player. I don't know if Rib has, even though he's in Raid. Rolling did in his previous life when he was, even probably when he did streaming, but when he first started, was a tournament player. Fishy is a tournament player, but he's not a CC, he's just a streamer. So we've now got somebody who's official, who is actually a tournament player. So that helps a long way, and kudos for Wargaming for sort of picking somebody like His Royal Fatness, because someone like that is incredibly useful to the CC program. It really is. And not only that, it's great that we've also got somebody from the NA server, because again, this is a server that is underrepresented, and hopefully we'll get one from Asia eventually. I know there are Asia CCs. We don't know of them because they speak obviously different languages, but there are CCs in Asia. I think there's a Japanese one and a Chinese one. But, having somebody from the NA side who does tournaments regularly can only be good for the overall thing, because he will bring something to the game that, whilst I can stream the tournaments, I don't play the tournaments, he can bring something to that side of it, which is real experience and real knowledge. And that's good, I think.
I mean, and it's not just like, I mean, Fatness is like, obviously all of the players at that top 8 level are exceptional, but then all of the players on like on a top 4 or like a grand final of a server championship side are phenomenally good. But then like Fatness is, I mean, he is very, very good. And if like going back, like the whole missile magician thing, like, I mean, the skills that boy had were ungodly, and like, I mean, he practiced a lot, but like, he was able to achieve things with ATGMs, and I was like, that's disgusting. It was disgustingly good. And I mean, he's very, very, I mean, he's also very, very personable. He it's something that really stuck in my mind from the Twister in 2019 is because all the teams, they get given like this these jackets, like the team uniforms from Wargaming, and he gave his to Alexandra as like a gift or whatever. And he is I've never met someone who is like just such a universally a nice guy, and who's like liked and respected by so many people, and then is also so obscenely good at the game.
Mm-hmm. Which is why I think it's a great addition, and it may go a long way to bridging that divide a little bit between the tournament side from a CC perspective. So, and especially with NA being such a smaller server and the impacts we're seeing on this, it may be a voice that we really do need, to be honest. But time will tell. That's all I can say on that one.
Mm.
And hopefully, as I said, I'm not naive, maybe a little bit, but as I said, it's not in Wargaming's interest to completely screw up the tour side, because they do get sponsors for the bigger tournaments. They do get big. I mean, Wargaming generally, I don't give the money out of their own pocket. They are sponsored. So when we get into the Pro Series, there will be a sponsor, and it's the sponsor putting up the cash. So it's in their best interest not to completely make a bugger's muddle out of it, but it's just taking them time, and I think that's the thing that's annoying majority of the player base, to be honest with you.
And I mean, do you think, because obviously we've reached quite I feel like we've kind of coalesced on a neutral position regarding the teams that are using 100% win rate accounts. Like we said, like, okay, they're doing it, we don't blame them. Obviously, I'm saying this is someone that's not participating in the tournament. Like, are there teams? I know, like the vibes. The Bear Nose has said, like, they're just not even bothering participating in the PYS at all because of what's going on. But are there teams that are genuinely pissed off?
Yeah.
At the other teams that are using these 100% accounts? Is that
Absolutely.
like creating a divide and some animosity?
I think it is. I mean, if I just look at the tournament tab on the official Discord, then yes, you can see that there is a divide in the community whereby people are certain players, certain clans are pretty upset, and and then there are clans, I'm going to name it, Endgame, who just don't care because it doesn't bother them, to be perfectly honest with you. And there are other clans like Raid who I don't think have a massive opinion on it because it doesn't really bother them either. So there are clans who it doesn't really affect. There are clans who are fed up with other clans moaning about it all the time. There are clans who use it and rub people's noses in it. So it is causing a divide, and I think it's fair to say that a majority of the clan wars seen, reading between the lines, want this shut down. They want it closed, they want it gone, and they want the drama surrounding it to stop. And there is a bit of drama, I must admit. I read the comments and the posts put on Discord on the official Wargaming site there, and yeah, you can see there's upset. And it is a raw nerve. And clans who don't use the 100% win rate account, who aren't at the very, very, very pinnacle of their server, are understandably pissed. Understandably. Because to them, they think, as you heard Bear say, they think it's tantamount to unsporting conduct, to be honest with you. It may not be against the rules. It may not be, these teams may not get into the top 8 or the top 4 because they'll come unstuck eventually. It doesn't matter how many 100% win rate accounts you have. If you can't play the bloody tank in a tournament, you will come unstuck. Simple fact of life. But it is screwing up the chances of other teams to progress. And as you said earlier, Rolling, using a loophole to benefit you to the detriment of another is reading between the lines on sporting conduct, to be fair. You are pissing on your peers, so to speak. So yeah, there is.
It's a good turn of phrase.
Yeah, there is a bit of a divide in the scene, which is understandable, and which is why people are pointing fingers at clans. But on the same token, I'm with you. I can't blame the clans. It's been out there, but it's got to stop. And only Wargaming can stop it. Nobody else. Nobody else.
We sent replays. Sent replays in of a certain clan in the top 8, who was doing countings. One of our players was in the battle. There was 4 of them in it. There was 2 on his side and 2 on the opposition side, and the 2 on their side was blocking our player so they could kill him, and they was doing it with every game, every player in their own team to get the win rates up. And then at the end there was 4 of them left, and one of them just sat there and shot the other 2. They didn't even fire back, and we sent the replays and everything to Wargaming and never heard anything. And that was a team in the top 8.
That should be something that Wargaming would.
Well, that's rigging.
And that's how that was rigging. Honestly, you've never seen anything like it in your life. And I'm not going to name the clan that was doing it, but it was just absolutely ridiculous when we watched the replay.
Oh, that would make my I don't know. I think I might have an aneurysm or something.
And I'll just say, one of them had an IMO tag, and we wrote to the clan lead of IMO, and they'd even put an IMO tag on this tank from this certain top 8 clan, and he wasn't even in IMO. So it looked like it was a different clan.
Well, I mean, rigging I don't agree with, because I mean, rigging,
and it is one of the 100% win rate ones.
Yeah. Well, rigging to get your stats up or whatever is a big no-no in the game, and I do know that if it's clear-cut, Wargaming do take action. There has been instances in the past, not too distant past, where certain players were seen to be rigging, and not only do Blitz stars name and shame them, because they do, but also Wargaming do take action, and they come down hard on them, to be fair. They appeal it, and it gets overturned. The length of duration of the punishment does get overturned. But they do take rigging seriously. But the problem that Wargaming have, and I've had a long discussion with them on rigging, and one of the issues that they have is that it's got to sort of be crystal clear to them that it is rigging. So if you go back, I think, 6 months, and there was an E50M gone into the Hall of Fame, and when you looked at the replay, the player in the E50M wasn't actually breaking any rules, but his toon mate was blocking other players in the same team to allow the player in the E50M to get more damage and therefore get into the Hall of Fame. And Wargaming took that very seriously, and it came down hard on the player who was doing the blocking. And I think the community itself came down pretty hard on that player as well. So we have seen things like that. And you may not hear back because they hide behind data protection, which to be fair, is a bit of BS, unless you can really find out who that person is in real life and where they live and everything. But I've always said this to Wargaming, most people hide behind IGNs. You're never going to find out who they are. You should just say to them, whoever's raised a complaint, just say, look, action's been taken, this person's been banned. It's not going to breach. I think
probably one of I can see one of the issues behind doing that, for example, is that if they say this account has been banned or whatever, or for however long, I can imagine one of the first kind of problems you get in that scenario is going, oh yes, that's a win for me, screenshot, go to the official Discord.
Absolutely.
Look what happened to this player.
Yeah, there is that.
Which is, I mean, if they deserve a 7-day ban for blocking or whatever, then they also deserve to be pilloried on the public Discord server. And Wargaming could preemptively, because I've played a lot of online games in the past where there was this is back when we had forum sections rather than Discord, but there was a pillory, and it would be it would list the account, the offence, and the resulting.
But they still do it.
Say this person chat ban.
They still do it, especially for
they still do it in a lot of games.
So it sort of defeats the object of data protection when at the end of every tournament they list those who have account shared. They don't say they've account shared, but they said these guys violated the rules and they've been banned or whatever. So the data protection thing is just a load of BS. It's just a hide behind to probably stop trial by community, as Roland says. To be fair.
And it would be. That would be. I would like to see that, and then but then also Wargaming, maybe they don't want people to know how many people they're gap banning and perma banning for various different reasons, because it's probably quite a lot. I've got to go. It's getting on here, but I think this has been an absolutely cracking.
I think we should start wrapping it up. Actually, it's been
cracking
a long discussion.
So I'll it's been, but I think we've really covered quite a lot, and I'm excited to see sort of come what may. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this sort of situation evolves. With regards to the seeding system and win rates, and even a little bit. I mean, like, as much as I feel sad for like the drama and the people being unhappy, it's fun to watch. It is fun to watch when kind of clans go at each other, going, "Oh no, you're using 100% win rate accounts. Oh well, you suck." And I mean, like, I'm here for it. I'm looking forward to it. I've got my popcorn ready. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the Discord section of the official server. So, but thanks, Fujit, for the great streams and for having me.
Jumping in, Rolling. It's very useful as usual to get your take on the tournament side, as you're greatly respected in that scene, especially on NA, EU, and Asia. Not so much are you, because they don't know you. Get out there more.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't speak much Russian, so we're working it. All right. Cheers, Fujit.
Thank you, mate.
Ciao, mate.
Thanks for
Ciao,
jumping in.
guys.
Cheers, Brian.
And with that, I mean, we'll probably bring this to an end now. We have spoken a lot for 2.5 hours now. Didn't really cover all the topics I wanted to cover because there were other things, but I'm going to do another one on Thursday after the final of PYS number 1. So we can have a catch up then. So until then, guys, thank you for joining in. Thank you for contributing, and thank you for speaking up, especially the likes of MJ, Jake, and the Bear Nose. Thanks for that. The whole idea of these type of streams, by the way, is to get you guys to talk as well. It's not just about me doing monologues or whatever. So, you know, it is designed for the community's voice. And as an official CC, I tried to feed all this sort of stuff back to Wargaming. And just to put you in the picture, I did tell Wargaming I was doing this stream tonight. They wouldn't be able to join because of the time differences and stuff. But no doubt they will watch it. So that's why I want people to sort of interact. So thank you. And again, thank you guys on YouTube for popping in and saying what you had to say. Because again, it's what we need. It's the whole idea of having a community is giving that community a voice. And it's only if we have a voice that Wargaming listen, funnily enough. The more people who step up, the more Wargaming will react. It's as simple as that. Anyway, any final thoughts before we go from the guys on Discord?
No, I think you said it all.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. With 100 win rates, I think it's getting to a point where if you can't beat them, join them for a lot of people. And until that gets fixed, you know, we'll just have to see.
Yeah, they are going to fix it. We're just trying to move that along quicker.
The problem will be, Fujit, they might try to do like they did with the missiles. They might nerf it first and then find the solution to it after.
Well,
possibly.
Well, the understanding I've got from Wargaming, again, they have put this out publicly, that they're going to try and weight it on battles. So I don't know how they're going to do that, but they're going to look at battles. And as I said to Rolling halfway through the stream, I don't know what battle counts they're looking at. Random battles, total battles, I don't know. But that's what they're looking to do. MJ, you were going to say something?
No, I said you basically said everything that I think the NA community especially is having gripes with, just because you know, the 100% win rate accounts are you know, a big factor in just seeding and brackets in the Prove Your Skill on NA, just because of the, you know, the lower amount of teams available and playing. But you basically said everything I wanted to talk about, so I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad you guys from NA joined us, because it's always good to have the guys from the other servers coming on. I mean, unfortunately, we the timings don't sort of help with the Asian server. Excuse me.
I think you've done NA a fine service tonight, I must say.
Well, you know,
by saying what you
I'm
said.
hoping that, you know, one day that we'll get some of the bigger guys as well, the more notable guys like His Royal Fatness, maybe Fisher, use a streamer on NA to come in. To put their views aside as well, because they carry more gravitas than I do, so to speak, on the NA server. Not that I carry any gravitas on any server, but they carry more gravitas on the NA server than I do. And being the representatives of NA, be it from the streaming side or the CC side, I think it would be useful if they could do it to do that. But you know, at the end of the day, I can't force anybody to do anything. But it's out there, guys. His Royal Fatness, if you ever watch, and Fishy, if you're ever around, by all means, please, guys, jump in, have your say, and tell us your thoughts. But I'm great. It's great that we've had representatives from NA here. I love that. It's brilliant. So thank you, both Jake and MJ.
Fujit, if you want, I can reach out to His Royal Fatness because I'm good friends with him. So if you want, I could talk to him.
Awesome.
I'll see if he could,
Yeah, if he's got the time,
hop on here.
I'll be doing it again Thursday. It'll be like a catch up on PYS number 1, our thoughts, how we thought it went, etc., etc. Did we have major impacts? So yeah, that'd be really cool if you could. I'd be very grateful and appreciative. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll definitely do it. But until next time, I'll see you later.
Thanks
Have
a
a
lot,
good
mate.
one.
Thanks for jumping in. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Bear.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you, everybody.
Yeah, see you later, Future.
And, yeah, this is a really good thing. I think actually that's sort of happening now is people talking about this kind of stuff because I think once it's out there, it's out there. and
Absolutely.
they should start to act on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but thanks for having me
that's a
anyway.
whole lot of it. No, thank you for joining. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much indeed. And again, as I said, thank you everybody on YouTube. I'm back again tomorrow for streaming the tournaments, Asia, EU, and NA. No tours today because of the update, so everything's been cancelled. So I saw somebody in the chat earlier say, when is Fishy streaming NA? Well, he will be streaming it on the 28th, basically. Or whatever, or the timings. He's got his own timings as well. So, but mine's listed for basically tomorrow. So that's when they'll all kick off. All tours were cancelled today because of the update. So it wasn't going to interfere. Problem is, I was going to do a stream where I was going to throw together a team to do a season coin, but I can't do that now because obviously I'm streaming the EU server. But we'll get round to that with plenty of time. Don't worry. So until the next time, guys, thank you on YouTube. Really, really chuffed that you lot jumped in and had some says. Until the next time, I'll hopefully catch you all tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of whatever day you are in, and bye for now. Thanks a lot, guys.